Hello there, it's your friend Phil, project management trainer and coach. We got a question in from one of our clients about the PMP exam, and I wanted to address it really quick. Some folks have gotten confused regarding how the exam syllabus is set up. Let's talk about the PMP exam syllabus for a quick second. There are many study guides out there. And unfortunately, these study guides for the PMP exam do not have the chapters broken out the way the exam is, or the way the exam is based. It's based on 3 domains. We have the first domain being people. The next domain is process. And the final domain is business. There is no mention of people, process, business in the PMBOK guide or in the Agile practice guide, but you can map every single one of these to a chapter or section in the PMBOK guide or the Agile practice guide. I know a lot of folks have study guides and study aids that they use, and a lot of these predate the current exam. So my suggestion to you is to not worry that much about having a study guide that maps directly to the domains. Instead, make sure you understand the tasks that are in each domain. For example, the people domain has 14 tasks. The process domain has 17 tasks, and the business domain has 4 tasks. And that gives a total of 35 tasks. Many of the tasks in the people domain map directly back to chapter 9, which is about resources. But remember, when we say resources, we're talking about people, equipment, supplies, facilities. So the people domain has ties to chapter 9. There are topics here that you'll recognize immediately, things like Tuckman's ladder, for example, known as the 5 stages of team development, the concept of conflict management. And in chapter 3, there's a lot of mention about the concept of leadership. You also find these mentions in chapter 9, but not as pronounced as chapter 3. You also find in chapter 10 the concept of communications, and chapter 13 the concept of stakeholder engagement. Now, for every chapter in the PMBOK guide, just remember this: every chapter in the PMBOK guide has a people component where people interact. For example, I'm going to put this in blue because it's not as pronounced. Chapter 11 is where we talk about risk, but there's a lot of human interaction here. Get it? So when you're taking a look at this syllabus, don't get frustrated. Frustration won't do much good. You just need to hunker down and dig for the gold. Find out where it is. Now let's talk about the Agile practice guide. The Agile practice guide has got mentions of servant leadership. It's got mentions of the team and how the team interacts. It's got mentions of the team charter, for example, pages 49 and 50. These are very important pages as well. So are the places where leadership is talked about, servant leadership. So as you comb through, my friends, you're going to find a lot of this information is buried in there. Now, on a different level, when we talk about the exam, the PMP exam, I have always recommended to people to also take a look at the Scrum guide. And I do this because people need to be sensitized to Scrum, which is used by over 70% of organizations that claim to use Agile. So of course, Scrum is important. And I tell them they need to go through the Scrum guide because there are people interactions all throughout Scrum. Think about the 3-5-3. There's interactions between the three roles, the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the team, right? Or we could call them the development team. There's interactions there. There's interactions throughout the ceremonies, the sprint planning, the sprint itself, the daily Scrum or daily stand-up meetings, the sprint review, the retrospective, and even the unspoken six. The sixth ceremony, which is unspoken, which is the backlog refinement. There is also interaction at that level. And then when you talk about what happens in all of these, a lot of this pertains to deliverables or the team or just all-round health on a project. And the last three, of course, you remember the product backlog, the sprint backlog, and the PSI, the potentially shippable increment. There are human interactions all throughout Scrum. So my friends, when you take a look at the exam, you need to understand that the contents are scattered all across various texts, PMBOK guide, Agile practice guide, Scrum guide. I often tell students to not get so hung up on a study guide. Instead, know where the gold is in the actual original references, right? Now, the Scrum guide is not mentioned as one, but I've heard from so many of my students who've aced this exam, the Scrum guide is going to help you as well. See, let's talk about domain 2. Domain 2 is just straight up PMBOK guide process or Agile practice guide process. So I'm just going to say chapters 4 to 13 is going to get you there, or just anywhere. All of the Agile practice guide needs to be understood. There are a lot of places in here, okay? But there's one that is extremely important, and it's page 90. The moment you turn there, you realize you know it. Page 90, all the way to the end of that dialogue. I believe you should go up to either 96 or 97, just wherever that dialogue stops. And what you're going to see here is mention made of the 10 knowledge areas and how they are mapped to concepts in Agile. This is so important. It's going to help you understand how these knowledge areas are actually accounted for in whatever Agile framework you're using. Very important. I should also point out here, let me do that in a different color for attention. You want to understand your Agile manifesto, values, and the principles. I cannot tell you how important this is, my friends. Super important, super important. Also, for the people domain, let's just put it here, the Agile manifesto, because this will help with your thinking. And you will not be tethered to any one document. But once you get the information in these overarching documents, you know where stuff is, you know how to direct your study, because the study guides that are available, to be quite honest, they just don't cut it. A lot of study guides are very weak when it comes to Agile, very weak when it comes to the people section and accentuating how Agile addresses these, you see. All right, as far as the Scrum guide, yeah, you need to understand the intricacies of Scrum, and not just that, you know, beyond Scrum, we have other places in the Agile practice guide. If you go to the back of the book, we have a little annex there, and you got other flavors of Agile. You need to understand the other flavors at a high level. XP, TDD, DSDM, ATDD, BDD, Scrum, Kanban, and the like. You get my idea? You got to know these, they're at the back of the book. In terms of Scrum, you got to know the process. Know the process. Scrum has some pretty prescriptive processes unbeknownst to people. It looks lightweight and all, but there's some very prescriptive things that you do, you know, and with a self-organizing team, just understanding those concepts, they'll go a long way to help you in the people and the process domain. All right. When it comes to the business domain, the business domain is not covered in great detail in the PMBOK guide. You got to kind of dig to find the information, but I'll just say chapter 1, which talks about the reasons for authorizing a project. You also have chapter 2, which talks about governance a little bit. And you have mentions made all throughout the PMBOK guide regarding these things. You got to understand the business case, and you got to understand your benefits management plan. Okay, these are talked about in chapter 1 as well. And they are all throughout. You got to understand tangible and intangible value and all that stuff. All right, now in the Agile practice guide, there is mention made of these scattered all throughout, but I'll just say the Agile manifesto values, again, and the principles are going to help you sensitize yourself to the relevance of these tasks from an Agile perspective. How do you map these ideas back into the business? How do Agile and business correlate? That's going to be answered there. The Scrum guide, in my opinion, not the most helpful for the business domain, but the general understanding can help you. All right, so I know it's a very long answer to a short question, but this needed to be done to help you better understand what on earth the exam is all about. All right. So I want to go back and make sure I've addressed the entire question. So the entire question, the domains are confusing. I agree. I hope this breakdown has helped. In any study guide that references the tasks and the domains, you want to read the PMP exam content outline. And that is where those things are broken down to enablers, but it's the job of whoever your trainer or coach is to break each one of those tasks and enablers down, and that's why in the study programs we design, and in this case, we've designed some study programs for your firm. Those study programs have a breakdown, okay, of people, process, business, with exercises, with questions, and hopefully with enough information to get you to the point of comfort before your exam. All right, thank you very much for the question. You take care and bye for now.